Hi friends, I'm Scott Hanselman and it's another episode of Hansel Minutes. Today I'm chatting with Rizel Scarlett. She's a staff developer advocate at a company called TBD, which is an incubator operating within Block. How are you, Rizel?
I'm good. How are you doing, Scott?
I am very well. Thanks for hanging out. So we worked together when you were at GitHub, and you were a developer advocate at GitHub, and we went to conferences and worked on GitHub Universe and did all kinds of cool stuff because I work at Microsoft in my day job. But you went off, and I think this is so funny. The company is called TBD, like to be determined.
Yeah, I think it stands for to be decentralized.
Is that what it means?
I think so, yeah. I was like, when are they going to come up with their name? This is crazy. But no, they came up with something.
Okay, to be decentralized. That's interesting. Well, this term decentralized on its face as just like a noun, like makes sense. I get it. Like something is decentralized. It's spread apart. But I feel like with all this talk of crypto and blockchain and Web3 and this and that, like the word decentralized has got a lot of baggage along with it.
Yeah, I think it does too. I think even coming in, like I was interested in joining the company because I kind of wanted a challenge. Like I wanted to learn from Angie and I wanted to code even more and delve into technologies I didn't know, but I was scared of that term, decentralized.
Yeah, I guess it's a verb, not a noun. And then you refer to Angie, you're talking about Angie Jones,
yes,
who is the VP of DevRel at TBD. And I've seen talks that Angie has done on distributed identity. And I think people are starting to get confused about all the stuff that's moving. There's a lot of moving parts right now.
Yes.
You've got passkeys, which are having a moment right now. Literally yesterday, someone at work was like, "Why aren't you logging to GitHub with passkeys?" And I was like, "I just got the little freaking FidoNet thing. What is that called? The little
Is it a YubiKey?
I got YubiKeys. I thought I was supposed to use a YubiKey." And then Authy is shutting down their desktop app. And then someone said passkey. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
You have to use Authy on the phone. You can't use the desktop app anymore. That's happening next month. So then there's the Fediverse.
Yes.
So there's all, is there a competition happening or is it co-opetition around the space of decentralized identity as we all try to decide how we're going to log into stuff?
It does seem like there's a lot of players in the game. And as I've joined this company, I learned there's even more players. I learned Microsoft is part of this, Workday, like so many different Auth0. And I'm like, wow. But I think what's really happening is a lot of like individuals, technologists, organizations are like, yo, the way that the internet was created, it doesn't have an identity layer, as Angie would say. Like there's no good solution. One example I usually like to give is like, I have Black Girl Bytes on Twitter, Black Girl Bytes on GitHub, and I have all these different usernames, but they're not connected to each other in any way. I'm not able to like move my data with me. They're only connected because I'm the person that created it, but no one can be like, oh, Black Girl Bytes on Twitter. I know that she did these code commits on GitHub. So people are trying to reduce like the fragmentation of data and identities across the web. And I'm hoping personally that we could all work together rather than working separately, like, because it does seem like wasted efforts if we're all separate.
Yeah, because I have, Hanselman.com, the website, like that's kind of if I've got my finger on one chess piece when I try to make a move, it's Hanselman.com. Like that's where everything starts from. Because I've had that for like 25 years. But then like S. Hanselman is who I am on Twitter and Mastodon, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So then I'm always rushing to grab my username on like any new social media.
Yes.
Because I feel like it's mine. But I'm sure there's like a Sharon Hanselman or a Susan Hanselman that I don't know who is getting in there. And I always hate finding that S. Hanselman is taken when I already have a perfectly good domain. But then if I tell my non-technical parent, oh, we'll just register a domain and everything, like that's not really something that you can do.
Yeah, exactly. That's where the thing that Angie often talks about in her talks, decentralized identifiers, would come in, because you create that decentralized identifier and that moves with you across the web and you can add an alias up on it. And in the case of your parents, you might be like, why would my parents want to do that? Or it seems a little scary or something. They won't even know that's happening under the hood. I don't know if you've tried out Blue Sky, but they use decentralized identifiers and everyone was going crazy over like, getting to be verified or change it to their domain. And under the hood, it's really using decentralized identifiers.
Yeah, that's interesting. So on Blue Sky, this is a great point. Blue Sky is a decentralized identifier-based Twitter.
Yeah.
I think it's like, what is it, bsky.app. And I'm at scott.hanselman.com. And that involved making some changes to my web server so that Blue Sky would call back to me, check on some stuff, and that would confirm that I'm me. That's different than what Mastodon does, which is called WebFinger, where it has a
Mm.
well-known endpoint and it says, "Hey, do you have this well-known endpoint?" It's kind of like if you're familiar with robots.txt, right? It's like just have a file in this place and people can go there,
Point
and if
it.
it's there, we'll do stuff, and if it's not, we won't do stuff. That seems to be a real common theme. But then back to non-technical parent, they have to have a domain, they have to have a web
Yeah.
server, they have to make a text file and upload the text file. Like it starts getting complicated, even with the
Yeah.
Blue Sky example.
Yeah, that's true. And I think the way some companies, including TBD, are hoping to do it, not hoping to do it, but they're working on developing this, right? So I'm talking about this more in theory, but you would essentially store your identity in like your phone's wallet, similar to how you would have like a debit card in your phone's wallet or Apple Pay, Google Wallet, and then you would just like scan a QR code or something like that and move across the web rather than being like, I have to set up this domain or I have to do this. You just have this identity that's moving with you.
Okay. So then this gets into the idea of verifiable credentials. And verifiable credentials to me feel like one of the factors when we talk about like two-factor auth or multi-factor auth. Because like this, I'm holding my phone up. This is a thing I have.
Yeah.
That's a factor. I have it in my hand. I could lose it. It could be stolen. It could break. There's like stuff that can go wrong with it. And then there's stuff that I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a buddy of mine who DM'd me literally 20 minutes before we got on this call. I won't say their name, but you know them. And they said that they were unfortunately laid off,
Oh.
but their work GitHub account is enabled to their work email. And their backup for their authenticator app is on their work email. And they don't have access to any recovery codes because we always have that piece of paper that they say, print these recovery codes, and we don't know where they are.
Yep.
So now here's a person that I know is them. They're verifiably them. I could call them, and they have no way to get to their GitHub account. Is that a solvable problem?
Yeah, I think so. That was an amazing and perfect example, actually. And I've experienced that too, where like once I left GitHub, I was like, I thought I took everything with me, but then I realized I didn't. But yeah, that would be a perfect example of like moving across the web and being like, oh, I need access to this. And I'm just going to use my verifiable credential and my decentralized identity, which is like paired with the verifiable credential to log in. And if you want to talk more on, because there's a lot of companies using verifiable credentials and decentralized identity for various use cases. But what TBD really wants to do is they want to enable the exchange of like global payments, right? And they recognize, so backing up a little bit, right? Block, they own a couple of companies, including Cash App and Square. And they feel
Oh,
like extremely, yeah, they own Tidal, they own a lot. And they feel extremely proud of the fact that they're like, yo, we enabled money to easily be exchanged. Like you can just tap a button and you're like, hey, that's cool. I did that. And even for Square, I think it's like a little, I don't know what it's called, a card reader. You add it onto your phone and like mom and pop shops can essentially earn money through that. But they realize like it's not easy if you are trying to send money to a different country. And so they want to bring that same usability and ease of experience, but they recognize that because there's all these different financial systems, they will have to rely on like decentralization to do it.
yeah. That when you said like sending money overseas and that kind of thing, like right now we're bringing my wife's family over from Zimbabwe for her 50th birthday, and we're going to pay for like one of the tickets, but not the other one of the tickets. And like the simple fact of like we're splitting the flights, and I'll pay for half the like. How are they supposed to get money to us now? People who are listening might just say, "Oh, just send an international wire." That's not a thing that everyone has access to. Like there's people who don't have that kind of money in their bank. They have their money in their phone. If they maybe they have M-Pesa or they have minutes. Like some of our family members, they pay for stuff with cell phone minutes. Think about minutes as a currency.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't have the cash, just pay me minutes. or whatever. Like there's so many ways. And the idea like, oh, just send an international wire. If you have a banker, maybe, right, that you could do that and then spend $30
Right.
to send the money. So, gosh, how do you send money overseas? I use like Zoom with an X.
Yeah,
I use Western Union.
Yeah, I was just going to say I use Western Union, any like check cashier's place, because I was born in Antigua. My parents are born in Guyana in South America. Maybe my family uses cell phones and stuff. I don't know, but they seem very like traditional, and it's a long process. People don't realize like I got to go to Western Union and then they got to go to Western Union in their country and pick it up. So that creates like delayed access to funds, and then sometimes some ways of sending money globally has high transaction fees. So at TBD, we want to be able to lower all that.
You know, and you bring something really interesting up that we should dig into. Like they go physically to the Western Union, like office, with something. They have to show an ID, a national ID, and that's this credential. They physically have to have it presented to them, and the person's like, okay, this is sus, this is not sus, or whatever. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
And are they phone people, or do they like they probably don't have PCs? Like I don't know about my family are mostly like Android phones. They would be nice if they could have that credential on their phone.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how what they're using as devices, but yeah, it would be awesome if they can just show it and be like, this is for real who I am. And another benefit of verifiable credentials is like it only reveals the important amount of information, right? Like, I mean, this is a different example than like global payments, but in the blog post I recently wrote, I talk about like wanting to show your proof of age to be able to drink. You don't need to show your address and your first name and last name and all that. You have something called selective disclosure that just says, yes, this person can drink. So in the case of like Western Union or however you're sending money, it'll just be like, hey, this person can receive this money. This is actually this person only with the necessary information.
That is a really great point. Like the idea is like there's this name value pair pile of information that is in the verifiable credential, right?
Yeah.
Including my eye color and my weight. My weight has nothing to do with this money. Like you do not need to know my weight and my height. You just need to know that I'm that guy in the picture. So then you're saying that they would request the information that they want to know, just like my phone requests for my location or my access to my camera. It's going to proactively say, Rizel's website wants to know these 4 things. Of the 20 that we know about you, she only wants to know 4. And do you know them forever? Do you store them, or do you just know them for the moment that you make that decision?
That is a good question. And I think it's,
I think it would be privacy policy based, wouldn't it? Like you could take it, store it if you were being like, if you were not following the rules. But I'd like it. As a user of a verifiable credential, I would really rather that you just like make your decision and then throw it away.
Yeah, it depends on the wallet for who is doing the subject and then the person who is like verifying. But I don't think they're supposed to like keep it. And another thing I wanted to bring up is this global exchange tool. We're calling it TBD. Because it's currency agnostic, you can really just trade anything. It doesn't have to be necessarily you're like trading money. Like maybe you're trading sneakers for, this is a bad example that just popped in my head, sneakers for a car, something else where you're just like making an exchange. But the verifiable credential also is supposed to say like, I trust that I can make this exchange with this financial institution or whoever I'm doing the exchange with.
Yeah. So then I got to go and say it though, because I'm not a fan of crypto. And I feel like, Web3, God bless them, it's not a thing I'm super jazzed about. Like I'm not a supporter. It's too easily stolen. It's too easily taken from people. And it's also too easily, people who are saying, oh, I care about the unbanked, didn't seem to care about them before crypto existed. So let me ask you, like, is there crypto? Is there secret crypto in this? Is there blockchain in this? Is this another crypto thing I don't want to be involved in?
No, this is not a crypto thing. If someone tried to talk to me about crypto, I would have zero knowledge. There's no blockchain, like zero. When I joined, we did use, there's different types of decentralized identifiers, right? Mm-hmm. And we used a decentralized identifier method from Microsoft, which was anchored to the blockchain. And that was the only thing we had that had any relation to blockchain or crypto. But now we've created our own DID method called DID DHT. Angie likes to call it DID DAT, and that's anchored onto BitTorrent. So at this point, there's like nothing with crypto. We don't have a coin. There's nothing with blockchain.
Okay. So there's a lot of acronyms here. Let's take a second and let's tear them apart. So first we've got DIDs, decentralized identifiers. This was a W3C recommendation, and W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium. They're like people who like decide that's a thing. Like that's HTTP. That's a thing. So there's a recommendation for decentralized identifier to identify them as being a thing. Then there's TBDEX, DEX.
Yes. Yeah.
And then there's DID-DHT, which is what you were talking about. Yeah.
The method that is in there, so it's DID, decentralized identifier, that uses a distributed hash table. So that method is just talking about like how this decentralized identifier was made and how it functions.
Right. And I'm looking at the GitHub right now, at the TBD GitHub, and it says decentralization is a spectrum. The DID-DHT service enables you to run your own node and participate in a permissionless, blockchain-less network. So it's explicitly calling out that this is something else.
Yes.
Okay. And it says that the DHT, the distributed hash table, and I think are we sure that that's what it stands for?
Yes, 100%.
Okay. So it says that DHT is a distributed hash table that stores the documents. So when I think of a distributed hash table, I think of Redis, right? It's just like an endpoint. It's a big name value pair. I'll give you a key, you give me a value, which makes sense because you said I'm going to show my identity to if I want a drink or something, or if there's like maybe there's an age limit for tacos. And I'm like, hey, I want some tacos. And they're like, all right, we need to know these 3 things about you in order to get your tacos. Give me the keys. I will give you the values. And the point that you were making earlier is that it has to be verifiable.
Yeah.
Who decides? Am I verifying myself, or is there some organization like my bank or LinkedIn or the government that's going to decide I'm legit?
Right. So it wouldn't be TBD that's doing that, because what we're just doing is like providing the SDK and the programming framework, but it will be whoever is the issuer. So in like a verifiable credential, like exchange, there are 3 different roles. There's the issuer, the person who gave the verifiable credential, the subject, the person who receives it, and then the verifier who is like going to double check. So in example of, I'll do the alcohol example again, right? Maybe the Department of Motor Vehicles or the like a passport registry or something like that, they know your age for sure. So they could issue you a credential saying like, hey, Scott, he is legally of age to drink, and then you get it, you store it in your phone with a QR code or a link or whatever, and then you go to an alcohol vendor or a bar or a restaurant, and they're like, hey, are you actually old enough to drink? And you just tap your phone and you get that like check mark, and they say, okay, we'll give it to you. So it would be somebody who is like trusted by that verifier to issue it to you.
People always ask me, I'm always getting carded, so constantly.
You do look very young.
My baby face. So, okay. So the issuer is the organization that makes the credential, like some trusted org. Yeah. The subject, I'm the subject.
Yeah.
The verifier is the person that thinks I'm sus. And then maybe if I was like, my wife could be like a holder, that's a 4th role.
Yes.
Where I'm usually both the subject and the holder of the credential. Yeah. But I could maybe send my wife to buy stuff for me and then present my credential on my behalf, or my lawyer, or I could, whatever, something like that.
Yes, exactly.
Interesting. Okay. And then it sounds like we always hear the words cryptographically signed. It's cryptographically significant. This is probably using private keys and public keys and all this stuff that already works, that are already standards in the space.
Yeah. When people say that, I used to get really overwhelmed. I'm like, what does cryptographically sign mean? But yeah, just like you said, it's just using a public key and a private key just to prove that this was actually signed by the person that created it.
It seems like when early things like this start getting built and being presented, it's overwhelming. And it's like, oh, I'm going to have to write a bunch of stuff. I'm going to have to like implement this myself. But ultimately, then you have something like Apple Pay, which now is called contactless payments, because I don't even know when I'm tapping if it's using Apple Pay or if it's using some standard. I just know it's awesome.
Yeah.
Right? My wife and I were in Australia a couple of weeks ago, and we turned on Express Transit on our iPhones. Have you done this?
No. How does it work?
You know how on an iPhone you have to double tap on the right-hand side and do Face ID, and then your card comes up?
Yeah.
So you can go into the Apple Wallet and turn on Express Transit, which says, If it's a transit person, a transit operator, a bus, a train, then you don't need to do any of that identification if it's going to be like less than $10. So then you can just tap your phone, even if it's locked. And if you're getting on the bus, there's no ceremony.
I love that. That makes it so much easier. I hate the whole like waiting for my.
Exactly.
Oh,
Right.
I love that.
So my wife was like legit hating that. And she was like, oh, I don't want to do your Apple Pay. Like she thinks Apple Pay is like a Scott thing. She's like, that's too much. Like, because she's like, oh, whatever. I have my mask on, or my hair's different, or whatever. Like, it never knows it's her.
Yeah.
And so I turned that Express thing on. And then the point I'm making is that the user interface was delightful. It's been 2 weeks since we've been back. She's talking about this still. She's telling people, like, have you heard the news? So I want like verifiable credentials, passkeys, distributed identities to be so easy that I'm not personally writing code in my blog to like get this to work.
Yes.
Is that where your SDK is going to like make my life better?
Yes, that's where we're going. We want to make it easy for developers to create very easy experiences. At least in my mind. This is not quoting anything TBD.
Yeah. This whole thing's your opinion, right?
Yeah. But like, you know how OpenAI kind of made artificial intelligence easy, where like, at least for me, before OpenAI did all this stuff, I was like, AI is something that like PhD people do. It's real complicated. It's cool, but not applicable to me, and I'd never be able to use it. But I think they brought it down a couple levels where it's like just their everyday developer like me can use it, and where like something like ChatGPT, somebody that's not even technical, can type a couple questions in. So that's the level we want to bring it down to.
Yeah, exactly. So you're building the base of the pyramid, and at some point it's going to become delightful.
Yeah.
And my wife will go and talk about it with her friends. Like, this is so cool. Like, I have an identifier.
Yeah.
The thing that I'm worried then is that what could I lose? Like, I've got like, you can see here, I've got like all my cards in my Apple Wallet. Like, I hope that's recoverable. Like, I think we're all afraid of losing our digital identity, especially like our friend who's unable to get into their GitHub right now. And you're like, but I'm me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm actually going through your beginner's guide to, you have actually a blog here. I'm going to put this in the show notes, called The Beginner Friendly Illustrated Guide to Verifiable Credentials. And it's really long. Like, this is a very detailed blog post. This is not a thing you wrote in an afternoon. You put some work into this. And it goes all the way through. It's got code examples and links off to go and watch in public you all build this. So I will probably be able to answer some of those questions myself. One thing I'm surprised about, though, and this is just my opinion, that who is calling it Web 5? Like, Web 5, it's like Web 3 plus Web 2. The branding is off. Like, I feel like Web 3 is kind of burned, and we need a cooler name. I like DID.
I mean, yeah, maybe hopefully one day they'll be open to to changing it up. I wasn't part of the naming process.
Yeah, I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Once I learned more about it, I was like, oh, this is actually really cool. But yeah, I think I have ideas. Maybe as I gain more clout in the company, that I could be like, how about this?
Yeah. So it sounds like this is happening, like I said, at the base of the pyramid, but they have Cash App. They have, like, at some point when this protocol is ratified, when the tools are built, we're going to start seeing this kind of expose itself in ways that are going to make our financial experience better. So back to our conversation about how we're going to go and get our money to our relatives, I would like to text them the money, in quotes. I don't know how they're going to get it. I just want the experience to be as easy as, is that really you? Am I sending it to a bad guy? Okay, cool. We all agree that it's really you. I just got off the phone with you. Here's the money. And it just shows up. I don't want to worry about currency conversions, which is a huge deal for us right now. We're like chasing currencies, trying to get the number right, because some of our families in South Africa, and we'll lose like $50 if we pick the wrong day to send the money.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't wait for it to be like, reduce those transaction fees. It's easy as 1, 2, 3. And as you were talking, I just remembered something, because you were saying, like earlier you said, when is this going to be something that's usable? Although we're not at 1.0 yet, there are some companies that are using our products. And I think you might find this kind of interesting, right? There's this company called Formfree, and they have this platform called Passport. And they basically are giving back like the power, quote unquote, to borrowers for getting loans. So instead of them being like, hey, I am this person, here's my credit score, blah, 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 and then being vulnerable to maybe unconscious bias. Maybe they're like, oh no, that person is Black and they live in the hood. I'm not giving them a loan. In another way, they basically say like, hey, here's only the necessary information you need to know about me. And then it's almost like, I think of it like Tinder for banks, right? Then some banks come in and say, ooh, that person, I'm willing to give them a loan. And then you as the borrower swipe through and you're like, nah, I don't want that bank. I want this bank. And then you match with them and then you get the loan through that. So they're using verifiable credentials and they're using another concept that I didn't bring up called a decentralized web node to do all this.
That would be really cool. Actually, my son, who of course is quite younger than us, has a different perspective like on how the world should work. And he'll come up with these ideas like he just got a scholarship for a college that he doesn't want to go to. And he's like, well, this is great. And he literally asked me this morning, how can I use this one to make the other college give me more money? And it's like, if it was humans, like I suppose you could get somebody on the phone and maybe like make them fight each other. But like not everyone has that privilege, right? Not everyone has is like a first round draft pick.
Yeah.
And can go and be like that. But you're describing a world where I could say, I want a car note. And then companies could compete over me.
Yeah.
And I could tell them only what I want to tell them to make their decision using selective parts of my distributed identity. And then to your other point, run the web node myself if I wanted to on like in a container.
Yeah.
On my NAS, on my network attached storage machine. Or I could probably have someone I trust run it for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. So some companies are already doing this. It's early days. You said you're not 1.0. I'll put you on the spot. Is it 0.7? Is it 0. Like ballpark? How far along is the progress bar to 1.0?
We have a website called Are We Web 5 Yet? Let me go check it. I think some of our packages right now are at 0.41. So we're like halfway there or almost halfway there with some of the stuff.
That's cool. Okay, here we go. areweweb5yet.com. Web 5 is 85% done.
85.
That's freaking cool. So here it says, so it says verifiable credentials are 100% done.
Okay.
The IDs are 100% done. But then at the top of the stack, decentralized web apps are only 62% done.
Okay.
And then you can actually, I legit did not know this when I asked that question. So it's going to sound like some kind of softball question that I asked you, and now there's a website to answer it. But like, that's pretty freaking cool.
I was so glad because my percentages were off, but I'm glad.
No, but this is great because what it's saying is that all the way up through web nodes is like in the 90s. And then, it's a stack, right? It's 5 layers to this stack. Yeah. Web apps, wallets, nodes, credentials, and decentralized identifiers. areweweb5yet.com. Very cool. Well, thank you so much, Rizel, for chatting with me today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I have been learning all about how TBD is promising to make the decentralized financial world accessible for everyone. And this has been another episode of Hansel Minutes, and we'll see you again next week.